So we are going to be talking about what the new supercharged UX toolkit means for viewers and service providers. Joining Hermann and I are Annette Schaefer. She is an independent consultant, but formerly with Deutsche Telekom AG. We have Simon Adams, who all the way there on the end, who's Chief Product Officer of Gracenote. And we have two Simons on our panel, Simon Leadlay, and he is Director of Pay TV Business Development for You.i TV. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to briefly introduce what they do and answer this opening question. What are some of the new approaches and tools that you see impacting the user interface and the experience? So why don't we start, Annette, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, first of all, to answer the question what I'm doing, I was responsible until the beginning of March for the CE footprint of Deutsche Telekom, so everything outside of Germany. And that's mainly Central and Eastern Europe markets. And I think that's how I look at the world of UI and UX. And I think what I strongly believe that we can leapfrog search, voice search, and give customer better experience because of the lack of metadata in major of these markets. So I think I have high hopes for voice search to give customers in these markets with I said, bad quality of metadata, the same good of user experience that they're having, like a Sky customer or an entertainment customer in Germany.
Right, right. This is a topic we will return to, I promise you. Simon Leadlay, why don't you tell us what you do and then answer the question.
Definitely. I've been involved in designing and selling software and software tools for pay TV user experience for nearly 20 years. It's great to see Hermann's presentation on Android TV. The last 3 years I've been involved in a lot of operator tier projects, but I changed to join You.i or You.i in September this year, and we are a tools company that makes a runtime user interface engine platform that can run on any consumer device to support React Native development on 8 different consumer platforms. So you ask about new technologies. This was an exciting technology for me, and I joined the company.
So, what is React Native? Tell us what that is.
React Native is a UI development technology based around JavaScript business logic and a layout format called JSX, which is being used by Facebook for iOS and Android mobile development, and it's now an open project. What the team at UI have done is taken an implementation of the React Native environment and implemented it on top of this graphics engine that the company developed that is sitting on 8 or 9 different consumer platforms.
So what would you say its biggest advantage is? Rapid development?
Speed to market, yeah. Total cost of ownership. You develop the code once and you run it on 10 platforms.
Very good. So Simon Adams, please, what do you do? And tell us, talk to us about new approaches and tools that you see impacting.
Sure. So I run product at Gracenote, so that's video, sports, and music metadata. So we provide a lot of the core metadata underlying a lot of the MVPD or digital services that you see today. Very much has been highlighted. Our focus is on driving more granularity in the data that we provide. So providing much, much richer content around the show or the movie or the piece of music that you want to watch or you want to listen to, so that we can power that better discovery and engagement paradigm.
Right. So so that means much more metadata. Does that mean lots more different sources, or is it? Are we looking at multiple formats?
Yeah, if you take music, we've moved from the general classical rock type genres. We now have 2,300 genres that we track music in. We track it by mood and by tempo, so that we machine listen to the music, so we know what the song is about. So other than just tagging an artist as being a rock artist or something, now each individual track can be tagged with 7 or 8 different things, so that you can generate much more granular information and playlists around it. And we're doing the same thing now around video. So we have developed what we call a video descriptor sort of taxonomy, which is, mood, theme, scenario, character, time setting, source. And we have up to, 15, 18,000 tags that we can put around a piece of content so that you get very granular, almost like a fingerprint for that piece of content, which helps drive much better recommendations, much better discovery experiences. You tie that to popularity indexes for various markets so that you get better search results. And then obviously the people that we work with have their own personal information that they have from the user. You tie that all together, and then the next generation of personalization becomes much, much better.
So, for example, I can ask for play me sad country music songs.
Yeah, you
that
can,
sort of thing.
That sort of thing, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Very good. Hermann, you don't need to introduce yourself. You've already done that. So what are some of the new approaches and tools that you're seeing that are impacting the user interface and the experience, aside from Android TV? Because we already talked about that.
Aside from Android TV, to me, what is important is to actually make the disaggregation of the linear experience work, especially catch-up TV. So catch-up TV is not terribly new in the industry. Mm-hmm. It's been around, but it's been hidden in EPGs, much of the time. And I believe there is so much value when you get consumers to understand it and use it. Yeah. My kids are like that. My kids have grown up with a catch-up TV service, so they have a very strict mother. So when they're finally allowed to watch TV at 6 p.m., they always watch the 3 p.m. Mickey Mouse or whatever it is. So they used to do that, but older people are barely aware. I mean, even in our current service, we have less than half the people actually using regularly catch-up TV.
So it's pretty clearly marked in your EPG, right? You see that little circular arrow, and it looks like most of the content is catch-up. You can catch up with most of it, and yet you say people are slow to get there. What do you think the problem
It's a change in habit. Many people just use. They buy the service some people buy for functionality, some buy for content. Yeah, and they connect it and they zap, and maybe they're just happy with it. But I believe if I get them to actually use it, to use catch-up and start using it, I'm going to have higher stickiness to the service. And that's where the recommendation rules below are becoming very important, because not everyone is methodological to go into an EPG and go back or search or whatever. You need to have a bit of a playful experience. Ideally, driven then by recommendation and get more personalized. And this is, if you open a YouTube today, this is exactly what happens. It opens to you and it gives you something. It's not 100% hit rate, but you find something that is interesting. Yeah. And I think I leave YouTube, I leave Netflix. But the linear experience, that's what I want to own, and that's where I really want to use all the functionality to get the customers enthused.
So, I want to throw that question open to the whole panel. This is one thing that's fascinating to me. It's certainly one thing that showed up in the research that I covered at the beginning. There's still loads of people who are using paper guides, even though they have access to more advanced tools. How do we get people to move more quickly to embrace technologies that can really help them enjoy the content that they want to enjoy? What are some of the things that we can do to help that? Simon Leadlay, what do you think?
And I think you're right to identify recommendations and personalization and so on. It's a key technology, a key influence in our business. I think we're also changing just even the sort of sit down, switch on kind of experience as well, to be one where, based on those recommendations, you're presenting to the viewer. Just start here. It could be an on-demand thing. It could be a continuation of a catch-up. It could be live linear. But I think there's this need to show value in your existing subscription package. You need to show value in your existing service, and you're not constantly being asked to buy something new. So if that's driven through personal recommendations, driven through more intelligence about time of day, about context, whether you're in front of the big TV or on a mobile device, I think that's all important.
Annette, any thoughts?
I think it's personalization and more recognize who's in front of the TV and who wants to look at something. I mean, it's an interesting UI UX that my ex-colleagues in the US have developed from Layer 3 for T-Mobile US, where they have a personalized user interface which contains live or live to watch on-demand services like Netflix, as well as a YouTube access. So you have everything in one screen, and you can decide where you want to go, and it shows you a particular content that based on what you have watched the day before. So I think that's one component, and I think the other is that through the all smart home and in-home devices that we will see, and there will be more in the future. It's not only Google and Amazon, but I think people getting used to using voice to search for things, and that I think will also embrace new, say, user stories and user behavior.
Yeah, what struck me about from the research was how many people have access but don't use it. So many people don't use it, and I've seen this in the US research as well.
Is that a demographic point though, Colin? Is it
I think people often don't know it.
Yeah.
They don't know it.
Yeah, I think actually educating people to know what's available.
Yeah. I
mean, if you take a Comcast Xfinity voice search, it's got lots of capabilities, but whether people know that they're all there, and unless you try it, you know, we did voice research a year ago, and we actually physically had people try things out, and a lot of the results were, I didn't realize it did that. That was really cool. Now I know it's there. I'm going to continue to use it. So we're building a lot of the data sets to help power that. But it's how do you help people discover that functionality is there is one of the big issues.
You know, instead of just recommending program content, recommend try searching like this.
The interesting piece of research you found is the smartphone connection. People realize that with a smartphone you can navigate UI, UX. And I see that in my personal, I mean, I have used Apple TV for quite many years. And people now understand that I can talk to remote. And now they can mirror the Apple TV on their smartphone. And that's when they get it, saying, oh, I can have Apple TV on my smartphone. And I think that's the use cases that you need to...
So maybe that's the bridge. That's the bridge.
I believe the interplay between smartphone and set-top box is under-leveraged. I mean, you have, for instance, for searching, sometimes the typing is easy. So again, Apple TV, when sometimes you look and the search doesn't always work, you pick out your smartphone and you type, because in a remote control you can't type a text. Or browsing through an EPG is often a smartphone better. So if you have the same UI and UX as we have, and then you have the kind of cast to your device, it goes fluid. Somewhere I look on YouTube, I look on a YouTube app, a video, and then I say cast to Wind Vision. So I believe that you know, for sometimes voice is better if it's, you know, whatever, what's the weather, simple music. If it gets more complicated, you search on a smartphone and cast to the big screen. You know, there is always a case, even with all this technology, even for laptop. You don't want to do Excel on a tablet or on a voice. You do Excel on a laptop. So in this interplay between at least smartphone, remote control, voice, I think all three is going to be there for different use cases.
Right. So I'm actually going to throw in a couple of quick-fire questions, and I'm going to ask one right now, directly related to this. I just want to let you all know my last question. This is the last question. They're all going to be thinking about this while we're talking. So you want to stick around for this. The last question is going to be, what have you tried to engage consumers that has not worked or had unintended consequences? So that's going to be your last question. So stick around, because you're going to want to hear well, hopefully, I'm hoping some embarrassing stories. Let's hope. But now, the quick fire question for you. Please answer in 20 seconds, or the giant hook will come out from behind the curtain. Can voice ever completely replace the TV remote control? Yes or no, and why? And we'll start with you, Simon Adams.
Okay, so I'll say yes and no. Yes, if you,
Fence sitter.
Yes, if you know what you're searching for, absolutely. You know, find me Mission Impossible Fallout. But I think if you are in a discovery mode and you don't quite know what you're looking for, I think it has to be a mix of voice and UI.
Simon Nedler, what do you think?
I think I'm slightly stronger on the no side, but I certainly like using it instead of typing. I don't like using it for navigation or anything like this, and I know the idea of like a UI that doesn't even exist on the screen and is only a spoken UI really puts me off. So I think there's always a time when you just want to be quiet and just not have to talk to something and just use the thing in your hand.
Annette, what do you
I
think?
said yes, and going back to Roland's presentation, I mean, it's a mixture between the voice, the AI, and the recommendation. And I think that will end up in some sort of a other device, but probably not a remote control or a set-top box. It's rather a phone or something that you use with voice as well as text abilities that you can type in for search.
Hermann, 20 seconds. Yes, no? Decider. You're the decider.
Not fully. If for search, yes. But there is a famous quote from Helmut Thoma, the first CEO of RTL Television in Germany, who said, sometimes people come on the evening, all they want to do is kind of, sit back and, zap up and down. There is no need for interactive television or something. And while you have all these, opportunities for interactive television, and some people it's interesting, sometimes it's about sitting and zapping up and down, as your own research showed. And that you're not going to do over voice. Zap up, zap down.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, it's like
Okay, so I'm going to
volume up
ask
and
you, what do you think? Put your hand up if you think voice will ultimately become the TV interface. Put your hand up if you believe that. And put your hand up if you put that down. Hand up if you don't believe that. Oh, well, that's pretty clear, right? So the no's have it.
Right.
Okay.
I select no with the remote, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both, but I think it's just this traditional remote control. I think it looks so outdated, right?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I have another question for you. A senior guy, so I was talking to this really senior guy from a big broadcaster, and he leant over to me at one point and he said, there's only so many ways you can display 5 things to watch on a TV. So my question for you is, have we exhausted the innovation in the TV interface? Are we done? Is there really no more we can do? Simon Adams, what do you think?
I don't think so. If you look at the number of different data sets we're being asked to produce to power next generation interfaces, there's a long way to go before we exhaust all of the opportunity that exists out there. I mean, one of the simple ones is we talk about personalization, and we talk about personalization in terms of tagging content so that you can get more granular in terms of providing recommendations or search results. But at the moment, generally what you get is you get a single image for that result. You're now going to start to move and see personalized images. So do you want to watch Dunkirk because it's a war movie, or because you like the actor that's in it? And if you like a war movie, you'll get one representation of the film. And if you like Kenneth Branagh, you'll get a shot of him in the film, because that's more likely to make you engage. And I think with the amount of content proliferation that there is, it's one thing being able to give you a set of search results, is another thing being able to get you to click through and actually watch that piece of content.
So what do we think? Annette, what do you think? Are we done?
No, I think we're not done. I think it's with all the TV operations and all the services moving more into the cloud, maybe that frees up more of the clutter of the UI, UX, and you can really focus on the user and what the user wants, and the rest is all pretty much not sitting anymore in a set-top box on clients or somewhere else. But allows us for much fluent, much easier and more appealing UI UX.
I mean, you're designing interfaces for operators.
Now supplying tools to let them design interfaces.
Okay, but you're involved in that. In that process. Are you seeing everything sort of looking all the same these days?
There's a lot of things that look like posters on shelves. There's no question. Posters on shelves, which is fine. My kind of hot topic for me right now, actually, and thinking about metadata, is coming into particular content types and categories. Like, we don't do sports very well. And I think about your demographic research and think, general pay TV watching population is aging out, except for the sports viewer. Young sports crazy people are still getting satellite TV. And yet we don't provide anything like a special sports user interface. We don't really bring good sports metadata. We don't show, hey, quickly rewind to the last goal in the football. Like, we're not bringing good metadata. We're not bringing good content-specific user interface, and we're not bringing good, user interest, personalization around, that kind of demographic. So I think there's lots to grow in there once I don't know whether an operator or a provider has to kind of step out of their safety zone of, well, I'm trying to be one thing for all people. Maybe you should be a special thing for a special class of person and bring the right content and the right user experience.
We're certainly seeing people ask for, we have sports events and all of the metadata associated linked to the traditional TV metadata that we've got. So if you're a Manchester United fan and it's the Champions League semi-final against Barcelona, and you happen to be engrossed in a movie, but a goal gets scored, you can get a notification saying switch over now. It's getting exciting. That's
So you've got the data.
Yeah, it's
you just
whether
need
people
to
can
enable that in the software, in the experience.
I know a lot of people that will pay money for that feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do we.
But it seems like that is an opportunity, right? There are certain genres. Sports is a very good one, where we could do a lot better. We could dive deeper in the interface. Are you looking at doing any of this, Hermann, with the Google interface?
Not specifically with the Google interface, yeah, but I clearly believe that the interface has ended. If you just look at the Netflix UI within the past 6 months, how it is evolved. Poster art changing from horizontal to vertical, auto start trailer. I mean, why can't we have trailers starting, for the type of catch-up TV we present today? Some still clips. Doesn't happen. Doesn't even exist in all the metadata environments. But I think the global players of Netflix and YouTube will drive the way you want to interact with your TV. And then I think the local TV applications will really follow these trends because they drive the innovation the way you want to interact. And then I think we've come quite close to that. I think we have a great interface, but it doesn't stop.
No. So I've got a couple of questions about sort of the objective. What are we trying to do with our interface? The first question I wanted to throw out here is, sure, look, getting to content is critical, right? Netflix always talks about time. They've got like only a few seconds to get the right piece of content in front of somebody. But the thing is, I sometimes feel, not sometimes, a lot, consumers want to enjoy the discovery process. The discovery process is part of entertainment, isn't it?
Yeah, you build your own library, so to speak, right? You bookmark what you want to maybe watch later or something like that. But I think it's a valid point that you have here is what are we resolving for? And I think discovery and content discovery we have a long way to go if you not live in the English-speaking countries. And I think if we can really deliver that federated search, that meta search engine on video and really give the customer everything, looks for a movie with Tom Hanks but gets all sorts of synopsis or some extras here and there, and I think then we're getting there. So I think we have a lot of things to do to make it really a great consumer experience or viewer experience.
Right. You.i was responsible for one of my all-time favorite interfaces, which of course is gone now.
Filmstruck.
That's the Turner interface, Filmstruck. I constantly got lost in that interface, and it was such a joy. That's a great example, right? I'm being entertained by the interface that's serving me up the content.
Which isn't the point of the UI, of course, but...
Well, you know what? Actually, for me and my wife, it kind of was.
Well, and I liken it to, going to the bookshop. Like, I go to a bookshop just because it's kind of fun to see, right? And you kind of flip through the pages and, I might like to pick that up. I come home from every single airport with more books than I need. And there's you should move to a Kindle. No, that would ruin the experience.
Yeah.
But there is... Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think there's something to be said about a good user interface kind of drawing you in a little bit. Sometimes I'll just pick up and play with my phone because the iOS interface is fun. But let's put it in the inverse. If you got the interface wrong, and I can't find content, and it's ugly and it's slow, then it's it reflects very badly and you get disappointed and you put down the remote and you walk away.
Yeah.
So if that's true, then maybe it is true that a really nice user interface will just pull you into play a bit longer.
So there's another aspect that I want to get into as well here. So we automatically assume when we're designing an interface, or do we, that the objective of an interface, a user interface that's presenting content to consumers, the objective is to get them to the best content for them. But is it? Because, wait a minute, I'm an operator, I have pay-per-view, and I have some pay-per-view movies that are expiring this week. I want my customer to get a shot at renting those pay-per-view movies before they go. How do we resolve this tension between what I as an operator want, which is not necessarily aligned with what the user over the interface wants? How do we resolve that tension?
I think you need a bit of honesty there, right? That you need to, if for the most part you're surfacing and recommending good quality content that really does show the value of the existing subscription, and occasionally you might say, by the way, this is available for purchase, or here's a special offer, then if it's transparently presented, then yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, we see we don't specifically do recommendations. As I say, we do the metadata underneath, but working with a lot of the recommendations companies, they build in the business rules. The only relevance, they can a customer of that recommendation company could recommend a piece of content, but unless it's relevant, they're still not going to get it watched or purchased. So it's all about, the business rules working in hand and not overriding a lot of the recommendations that are being brought forward. So they can influence them, but...
I think it's an element of trust too, right? If you trust the recommender 95% of the time, then you'll trust the recommender when it's putting out paid content as well.
Right. Yeah. Right. I've actually found, I've been happy when sometimes when Amazon or somebody has said, hey, look, this one's going away, you should get this one now if you're interested. It seems like that's doing me a favor.
There's enough real estate. I mean, these endless rows you have nowadays in interfaces. You have the recommendation, you have the soon expiring. I think the compromise is less than it seems to be.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing is, if all you get recommended is stuff that you like watching, you never discover anything new. So there has to be opportunity to drop new stuff on you and say, this is completely out of line with what you traditionally watch, but you may be interested.
Yeah, I just was on an AI panel, and one of the things that I've found with companies that are using AI for recommendations is that they almost invariably have human programmers as well. And they're there to specifically inject variety and interest, and to stop this, narrowing in the focus onto just one genre or one particular type of content. So let me just ask a general question about AI. How are we seeing AI show up with some of our customers or some of our implementations? Are you guys seeing any AI show up?
Well, I mean, the perfect example was the media distillery example.
Yeah.
We certainly use AI in metadata creation.
In the processing of the metadata. Yeah.
Either from creating episodic images for shows that were made in the 80s before episodic images became important, because as the user interface moved from text to visual, now, every Game of Thrones comes with an episodic image, but not every first generation Star Trek series comes with an episodic image unless we create it. So,
seen one in the Nordics, in northern. I don't know, Sky or something. I've seen some of the weapons in the Nordics where they try to bring more data into the equation for the recommendations, and they're based on AI. But I haven't seen anything in Central Eastern Europe, for example. So I think it's a long way to go.
Okay.
And also to build all these, business intelligence layers. So you have to, it's not so much about doing that into the operation and recommend something to a customer, but it's also about all the other sort of the billing and all the other systems that have to come into place. And I think that most operators are still not running this as an own business. It's more like a part of a triple play of FMC.
Yeah.
And so to really go into deep into start upselling and cross-selling, and as you said, there's some titles on TVOD that needs to be sold the next 4 weeks because the title will then go back in the catalog. I haven't seen any review that they really can do that. So
right. So let me ask you, we haven't, one of the things that I haven't heard a lot of discussion today about is the aggregation function, the aggregation of other SVOD services. And I know there's a lot of operators and providers out there that are thinking about how they can bring value by doing that. So let's talk about some of the UI interface aspects of bringing together multiple applications under a single roof. You saw the data that I presented on those people that are using cross-service search, very limited, even though there's been a lot of investment in that area. Is this an area in particular? I know, Simon, you're working with operators a lot. Is this an area where you think operators can bring a lot of value because consumers are more willing to use that?
It's, I mean, the aggregator role is the traditional role of the operator, right? Run the managed network, bring together the content sources, provide the correct user interface to display that. And I suppose it continues to work that way even when those aggregated channels are in fact entire applications. The challenge is actually coming up with the technology platform necessary to allow for that aggregation. Obviously, in my experience with Android TV, it's been Google trying to take that role. From an operator's point of view, that means that you fundamentally lose that search results screen, though. So when I make a voice search for content, it comes back with Google's view of that content and then a couple of buttons saying you could watch it on the operator's platform or you could watch it on this OTT app. So there's a break in the user experience there from the operator's custom UI to the Google UI. Other implementations have tried to move that all back into the server side in the cloud. You bring the metadata catalogs from all the different OTT vendors. I think that's what Sky does on Sky Q, right? They integrate Netflix metadata in the back office and then present it as though it were first-class kind of data. And I think there's no real clear answer there as to what the right solution is. If you've chosen Android TV for other reasons, sadly, this is what you get. And if you've chosen to integrate it in the back office, sadly, you're going to have to do a load of work to make it happen. So I think each one of these has pros and cons, which doesn't give a clear answer, unfortunately.
Yeah. You were doing some of this at Deutsche Telekom, weren't you?
Yeah, we have done different things from integration on set-top boxes with Netflix and Amazon and others. I think it's going back also to the experience what you said about you're really depending then on one of these partners, and it's a matter of scale. I mean, if you have a certain, say, 500,000, 1 million customers more, then Central Eastern Europe we had over 5 million. Then that makes perfectly sense, but it's the amounts and the efforts that goes into implementing and installing that on set-top boxes and integrating, and then in the end of the game having, as I said, a federated search across Amazon, Netflix, and your own properties and your own linear and live to VOD and catch up. It's a lot to ask for. I think the only European company I think has done this is Sky, to very perfection, and I found Comcast in the US. So it took them all a year and a half to get this done. And if you're an operator in Montenegro or Macedonia or in Croatia with 500,000 subscribers, then you really have to see the economy of scale. It doesn't make sense to do that.
So Win Hellas, I think, is one of the examples of an operator that's really taking a big risk. But most operators are really reluctant to do that.
Well, the challenge is going to be things are getting more complicated. So it's going to be more needed to have that federated search because the distribution platforms are fragmenting. If you look at, not only sports specifically, every sport is going direct, or it's fragmenting its rights across multiple platforms. And so being able to search and find the game that you want, it isn't the case anymore of its broadcaster A is the one that holds those rights. Its broadcaster A owns the rights to certain games, broadcaster B owns the rights to other games, streaming company X has rights to other types of games. And so being able to find exactly where you want gets more complicated unless you've got that federated search working. I mean, we solve it to a degree with sort of normalized ID structures and things, so that one piece of content is tagged once and you can find it. But the sheer scale of how much more content is being generated means that keeping track of that,
Yeah, this is where
And
the
it
technical
works as
challenge-
long as you have one language, so you would not make these efforts for languages. But I think we discussed it before we went to the panel here, is that question is if Apple is coming up with a solution to, I mean, when I look at my Apple TV in the moment, I have DAZN, I have Netflix, I have Amazon, I have Mubi, I have a lot of niche VOD services. I have federated search. I really enjoy that. But I think if that gets extended to publications and magazines and everything.
But let me just once more hang in here in terms of the Google aggregated search, because operated here, Google has listened.
Yeah.
So operated here does allow you to prioritize your own search
It does.
results, which come first. If you see then, say you look for Angelina Jolie, and then you see even also then a YouTube clip on Angelina Jolie's latest divorce rumors, to me it's an added value, that for the consumer. This is what aggregated search is about. It gives you all the content from all the applications you have. So I believe that Google probably more than Apple. I think Apple, I'd expect, are much more restrictive in terms of search. How they prioritize. I don't know the Apple model, but Google is showing some flexibility in actually listening.
So I got to ask about the Apple TV Plus announcement. Big announcement from Apple. They've been talking about, Steve Jobs said he cracked the TV interface. Is this it? Are we seeing his vision of what TV is going to be like?
I guess we'll find out when we see what the solution is.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit early yet. I mean, is it the death knell for the Apple TV device as well, right? Does the service become an app for everyone else's platform? Is there a reason to have the box anymore?
I have to say, I have trouble imagining an Apple TV in a current form working well for linear TV. If you take the current Apple remote control,
it's terrible.
And try zapping program up and down, what, according to your survey, 40% of people still want to do?
Yep.
It's tricky. I have the Zatur app. I use it a lot. As a German foreign living abroad, it has a Zap. It has it implemented, but it's not. It's for video on demand. It's a super device. For linear TV, not so sure.
Do we have any experience of people with Canal Plus in France, where they have launched the Apple TV as a regular set-top box?
Does anybody here does anybody have this? With Canal Plus, with the Apple TV? No? How many people have an Apple TV? Leave your hand up if you've picked up that remote upside down and not realized it.
Every time.
Really?
It's awful.
It makes me crazy. Makes me absolutely crazy. Since I asked you to put your hands up, I'm going to open it up to questions now. I've got plenty more questions, but I'm equally interested in your questions. We have a panel of experts here who really know what they're talking about with interface. So, what do we got? Do we have any questions out there? Well, while you're thinking, I don't see a hand up right now, but while you're thinking, just put it up. You'll catch my eye. I've got lots more questions that I want to ask. So one of the things that the beauty of digital delivery allows us to do something that we can't do in traditional broadcasting, and that's we can replace content on the fly. So we can customize streams by, say, for example, replacing an ad with a targeted ad, or even a segment of a show with a different segment of a show. Do we think that this is something that we will see a lot of in the future? That the linear form will actually become a personalized stream? And let's go beyond just ads. I'm reasonably confident. I mean, I'm interested in your opinion here too, but I'm reasonably confident we'll see targeted ads. What about personalized linear streams with dynamically created content?
I think it's more likely in short form than it is in long form. So rather than having a short-form recommendation engine that delivers you a personalized stream I can understand, be that based on YouTube or other MCNs, and mixing it up so that you get snackable content. I think, there's something to be said for if you're in a VOD environment and somebody is then going to stream you, you've watched this show on VOD, here's an episode of something that you haven't discovered yet, it's useful. I think that could be something that could happen, but I think generic long form, my wife watching something, starting in the same place as me watching something and ending up in completely different areas is unlikely.
Yeah, that's where I have seen it actually in short form with a service called Rio TV in the Bay Area. They're doing exactly that. So, Simon,
you're thinking sort of like synthetic linear channels based on personal content, right? Here's just a whole bunch of 5-minute stuff.
And also I've seen it from a Swedish company. They have produced based on the distribution, the platform, the time of the day, the audiences, different trailers for different shows. So it's also based on a recommendation. So I can imagine that you can use these kind of techniques or whatever to make things more appealing. And also on the advertising side, I will see it more, but long form. I mean, there have been these kind of developments, sorry to say that, there have been the American Film Institute tried that in the mid-90s to have different endings and different kind of, it popped up every here and then, and I don't know.
Two comments on that quickly. I think the one is that the technology may be there, but the economic reality is try discussing that with a Disney, that you're going to insert something in the Disney Channel. No way they're going to say yes.
No way they're going to.
Yeah. You can only see it. You see it in some AVOD, such as the Germans are too. When you do a channel change, they insert during the change. That's when you kind of sneak yourself in, but that only works in AVOD, not in a pay model.
Right.
But there is, again, for short form application on Android TV called Haystack, which aggregates based on the interest, the linear channel based on short form TV. And interesting enough, this application can publish a channel. So actually, it shows up, if you have the application installed, the application publishes a linear channel, which comes after, Greek first, second, Disney, and then comes Haystack News, Haystack movie trailers, which generates on demand a channel which feeds into my EPG frame. And the way Google works, it's even the same UI interface with the same blue and color, but it comes from the episode. If you ever have if you have a Google at home, an Android TV, download Haystack app, and you see that this is actually happening. And it's very interesting that you have a blending of application and channel. And so even though I don't have a Haystack channel on my lineup, but if a customer downloads the app, he has all of a sudden 6 additional channels which are on demand generated.
Well, I think we'll all be trying Haystack. Yes, sir, you had a question.
Yeah, my question is, like Anette, I have a lot of different services that I subscribe to, and yet I spend a lot of time looking for content.
Wait a minute, microphone's coming.
Yeah, I was saying that, like Anette, myself, I subscribe to a number of services, and I spend a lot of time looking for content, and sometimes unsuccessfully. Is it that difficult for a service provider to be my broker, and I just say, I want this, and they go out and find it from someone else, not necessarily on their platform, and then tell me, yeah, I can get you this, but it will cost you X on a TVOD or whatever other kind of format, or in a premium service. But I choose one service provider which has the UI that I like and the experience that I want, but they go and do all the searching for me.
So you kind of already do that, right, with the Android TV?
If you know what you want, I want, James Bond Goldfinger. I mean, say it, I want James Bond Goldfinger, it's going to show you where it's available. Yeah, and if it's on Netflix, it's Netflix. If it's on Buy, it's on Buy. That happens. I think the time you spend is if you don't know exactly what you want, and then you go into browsing mode.
Right.
And recommendations can help, but as we all know, even with Netflix, all the AI, it's not for lack of investment. It's not that the first recommendation you immediately click and say, this is what I want to watch.
I think to answer your question, in the moment there's two solutions from my point of view. You go with the Google Android operated tier platform, you have the search engine from Google, or you integrate in the set-top box all of these services, and that's the question if you can afford that, or is it worth the effort for an operator? You need a certain scale to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
And only the big ones have resolved that issue so far, or that challenge.
Alice, yes, we have another question over here. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening. Two-part question. We've already touched on, the panel's already touched on Netflix and the like doing rapid innovation of their user experiences. Do operators really want to follow that model and start to roll out A/B testing and new user experiences that way? And the second part is, operationally, are they actually capable of doing that?
There's definitely a requirement for it. Over many of the last years, I've been involved in projects where operators have insisted on a lot of metrics, a lot of analytics, and want to turn that around in as close to real time as possible. So I think, and we had a panel earlier today discussing if only the content houses knew what the operators know, and if only the operators knew what the content houses know. So yeah, there's a big request for analytics. There's a big request for, or requirement for that to be turned back into user experience improvements. And I think the technology is coming good for that to happen now. We're gone from the day when set-top boxes were one-way IP satellite, one-way satellite boxes. Now adding IP services, we're able to get analytics back from there. And of course, over years we've been building up quite a lot of data, but you need to be able to move to a shorter development cycle and user interface. And I'm not going to pitch my product, but this is where we're focusing our efforts.
But it goes back to what you said. Develop once and deploy many.
Yeah, exactly.
It can't be that it's all been customized in the boxes and here the client there and put this on that. And sorry, this needs to be turnkey.
And there's an interesting thought about synchronization too, right?
And adding more to it.
Different services on Android and different services on the set-top box, different services on the smart TV. It's got to be one holistic user experience.
Yeah.
All the same features all the time.
What's the cadence for the Android updates that you get? Slow?
Well, I think there's two cadences. One is the Android operating system, which, let's say, we launched on Android N, now we're going to go to Android P by end of the year, so probably have like a 2-year cycle probably. You can maybe skip one generation, then you need to upgrade.
Right.
And on our TV app, so the environment that we manage, I mean, we have, I counted the other day, we've done 20 improvements since the launch in April. So many of them are small, like initially we show on DTT only SD channels, because in some region we don't have SD, HD was complex. Now we put the logic in place to put HD if it's available, if not it's SD for the channel, and all these type of things. I have now a fast forward, I want to have the little scrobble images. Let's see, haven't implemented it, it's next on the roadmap. So I have a roadmap for the next 1.5 years to keep developing the service in big and small improvements, and it's going to continue. And that's about, we have now a cycle of about 3 releases a year. So 3 times a year we do, small subtle upgrades to the app that improve.
So I can tell you in the US, there are several licensees of Comcast's Xfinity platform. Comcast does daily updates to that interface. And I have spoken to several of the licensees, and none of them have told me that they take those daily updates. But they do tend to wait and roll them up on a bi-weekly cadence, not on a daily cadence. But that's still pretty darn frequent, right?
And
yeah,
interesting on the Comcast example was at the Philadelphia RDK conference last week, and they had a presentation of just how many thousands of point releases they'd issued. And of course, a lot of it's in the cloud, and a lot of it's kind of on their mobile device and so on. But their first point was, try it. If it doesn't work, pull it straight back.
Yep.
So their platform is built on agility, which allows
fast failure
to fail fast as well. So they can undo and go roll back multiple point releases in seconds. So there's no fear of failure.
And we have come to that moment, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to tell us what they have tried to engage consumers that has not worked or had unintended consequences. Let's keep it to 20 seconds because we are holding people back from beer and booze. So I'm going to start all the way down the end with Simon Adams. Simon,
Okay,
20 seconds.
I'm the imposter here because we don't do UX, so I'll have to use a personal experience. When I started out in sort of TV guides, and there was a large requirement that you had multiple personas available in each guide so that everybody could be tracked for what their favorites were. That rapidly became, we don't want any personas because nobody uses them. So my example of an epic fail is loaning my mother my Netflix account, and all my recommendations on Netflix are her favorite shows.
Simon Leadlay, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to go a bit broader, I think. I think as an industry, we had this over-optimism that we could get rid of the set-top box, get rid of all the devices plugged into our TV, do everything through our mobile phone, or maybe do everything through the smart TV itself. And it's been interesting to think that and this has been a popular conversation I know over the last couple of years, it's interesting to think that the cadence of the consumer device manufacturer and the reason for them doing what they do is very different from the cadence and the motivation behind what we all do as operators and media companies. And when you attach your content entertainment ownership and roadmap to, I'm not going to pick on them because there's a problem, but attaching to like Samsung's release cycle and their need to upgrade their browser, it's a very different motivation. And I found it as an industry, we all swung away from the managed set-top box and threw it all away. And I think we're all kind of still back there, right? We're
moving back there.
We like the branded managed endpoint, and we like having our experience under this industry's control, right? We want to present the best experience, and we have to own the whole experience. And yes, of course, on all the devices. But we need kind of a central point.
Okay. Annette?
I think network PVRs and the whole thing, storage, recording and all these things, I think this is one of the most hyped investments in the operator business, where we have spent billions and billions and personal copies and everything. And in the end of the day, when you look at the average use cases and what is being stored and what has been, it's absolutely ludicrous. And I think that I always have these discussions, been involved in many projects in that regard, and saying, you know what, for these 6-7% of your customer base, don't bother.
Don't bother.
Yeah.
It's been replaced by 3-day catch-up, right?
Yeah.
It's live to watch and catch-up TV.
Yeah.
Like
And you could have seen
24 hours.
that. You could have seen that 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
But everybody was saying we need a personal copy, and especially in Germany, where we had a dedicated, or the government was saying that we need to have an individual copy for everybody.
Yeah.
And then we talk about petabyte of storage.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's
And
crazy.
that for a use case that is like, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Hermann, last word. Epic fails.
Epic fails, I would say operator original content. I think,
Oh, yeah. That's good.
The idea that by having the one series that is national, with a famous actor, to get one person extra subscribed to your service is a joke. You know, you can't compete with Netflix, leave it to them. There's lots of investment has gone into, I think it was about a year ago, the trend into having your own operator series. It's a waste of money.
Waste of money. All right. Well, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. You've made it to the end of day one. Thank you for your attention, panelists. Thank you for your wonderful comments. And we will see you all in the bar.